Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 144 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co-host Anomoly,
Hello.
and we have another quiet week actually. Uh, Two in a row.
Yeah.
Imagine that. There's some new information about how things in patch 10.0.5 are going to work. Which reminder that comes out this coming reset. Um,
Yeah.
as well as Ulduar release for Classic WoW.
Yes. Yes.
And beyond that, nothing much.
No. No.
Um,
Been
so before we get into that, how is your progression going? I know.
uh yeah, progression for me. It's going. We got Kurog down this week. So first kill on that boss, which is I think which is good. Um I think we talked about that fight at length last week. It was just nice to kill it. It's still very tight on timing,
Yeah.
at least for us. Like, I mean, we killed it at the enrage point, so I think the boss got like 2 or 3 ticks, and half the raid falls over,
Right.
um and so like that was rough, and that was with a great. I mean, we entered the final phase at like 28%, I want to say, or something like that. So like we had a
Yeah.
very good percentage going in. But yeah, it's super tight timer. The opening swap too for like the first transition still like we finally swapped to our warrior tank and then had a couple of wipes to just like literally the ad almost spawning but not getting a tick of the debuff and like
Yeah.
the weird stuff
It's
that can happen
really,
there.
really tight. So we rekilled it this week, right? It took us a
Mhm.
few. I think it took us 13 pulls to get the rekill. Um,
Nice.
and I could take. I don't know what he does. God, it's so consistent. Like every single time, I'm like, oh God, we're getting the lightning ad, and then it just like goes away at 99% complete on the cast time. It's so
That's awesome.
ridiculous. But we had 100% success rate on that,
Oh, really? Oh,
which was
nice.
which was nice. Less than 100% success rate on actually some of the stuff in the Earth phase that we had just kind of been YOLOing
Yeah.
that actually came back to bite us. Like it just happened to work on our prog kill,
Mhm.
but then for the rekill, we like frontaled the raid a couple of times.
Nice.
Uh,
Nice. Yeah,
yeah,
we got really like after the initial one, like the Earth phase got really consistent for us in terms of like ad placement and like even with the overlapping like concentric circle move that the boss and the ad do, like
yeah,
we like the tanks were really good about placing it where like there was even if they both were spawning at like the second ring on the boss and the first ring on the ad spawn at the same time, there was still space
yeah,
to stand. So yeah, I mean like that was really consistent. That fight though as a healer is just so stressful. Like
yeah,
the end of the earth phase, like the final tick, everyone just drops to like 2% health. Like and you're
yeah.
just like, I don't know what to do here.
We also we had some incredible bad luck on some of our pulls that were actually we just like wiped two people getting enveloping earth 2 and 3 times in that phase, which is
Oh
the big
wow.
like healing absorb, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, if it's not the first one, they're supposed to hit a health stone or a healing potion, both, to get it off.
Mhm.
And so like we had somebody that got enveloping earth on the second, third, and fourth sets and just like died on the fourth one.
Yeah.
And
She doesn't laugh. Yeah.
like what do you do? Like you just blow a res on them. But then we had two different polls where we had the same three people get enveloping earth back to back
Oh
on like
wow.
the third and fourth sets. And that is just like that also like I think the fourth one like overlaps with the second like or maybe it overlaps with like the earth circles, which also just does a
Yep.
bunch of ticking damage on top of the regular ticking damage, and so they just like couldn't immediately get the healing absorb off of them and just like basically ticked out because they just had healing absorb left.
Yeah.
um yeah, that was I we didn't realize what exactly was happening with that until I went back and looked at the logs after the kill, but
Yeah.
that was dumb. Like that's
Did you Oh sorry.
I feel like that should have like a little bit of protection where it like tries not to target the same person twice in a row.
Yeah, almost like the jailer bombs, right? Where like
Yeah,
the jailer bombs had like you couldn't get targeted twice in a row if they were on their
yeah,
eligible targets. Yeah, yeah, something like that'd be nice. I mean, we found too. I don't know. So I guess the way you do frost phase, the way that we do it is we basically the first set of in the frost intermission, the first set of like soaks. We do tanks and then immune classes. So like tanks and some rogues, I
yeah,
think do it. And then like the second set is like everybody else. The raid splits in two for like the second soak, right? And
yeah,
like the tanks and rogues don't soak. So we had a wipe where one of our rogues got the soak, and the problem is like we do everything by like icon. So he got the tank soak icon.
yeah,
So so like he of course like instinctively ran to the tanks, and then the other person was like, "Oh no, where do we go?" And like we wiped to
yeah.
that, like being like just bad targeting there with
So,
that ability.
do you remember the Desane thing with the beam, where you could like have everybody but an immune person soak the beam,
Yeah,
and then the next beam would guarantee go on an immune person? You can do
yeah.
that with those soaks.
Oh really?
Yeah. So what we do is we have everybody except a hunter and a rogue soak the first two, so it's 9 and 9 ish. But it's like not that
Yeah,
big of a deal. Like just don't stand in both. If it's 8 and 10,
yeah.
nobody cares. Um, and then on the next one, just goes on the hunter and the rogue. And we did have one wipe to the first soak going on the hunter and then like not making the correct call for it to be a backup to have it,
Yeah.
because the second set of absolute zeros in the intermission freezes you if you
Right, yeah.
soaked if you soaked the previous one. That doesn't happen in the main phase, but it does happen in the intermission, which is like really janky. Like I don't understand
Yeah.
exactly why it is like that.
It's very weird. It's very weird.
Um, but yeah, so you can do the same kind of tech as you can on Desane,
Okay.
and that makes that much easier because then you just like don't have any damage on the second one.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'll bring that up this week then and see if we change that. Yeah. So that's what we were doing. We're sort of doing a small immune group for the first one and then larger, the raid for the second. But yeah, we got it down. It was just super stressful. Like the funny thing is like the earth phase is the only hard part, I feel like, of that fight, right? At least from a healing
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
Um, so it's super, super sketchy.
The
But yeah, then we pulled Dathea, or sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say we pulled Dathea like a couple of times, and but really it was just to like get like weak aura shenanigans set up since
Yeah,
um, I guess there's like a whole suite of things to know like what ad has how many buffs and
yeah,
to sort of like
yeah,
point your raid that way for marks. But um, yeah, that'll be a fun fight to progress on, I think.
yeah. Dathea is interesting. We'll see. So because we spent so much time on Kurog, we did not pull Dathea on Friday. We have
Mhm.
like 2 hours of pulls from the previous week, and we were getting to the second platform, and then it like died. Right,
Yeah.
we weren't killing the second platform, so we went back and did in between that raid night and this week's raid, did some like optimization of our platform groups, split up some of the like overkill single target DPS that we had going on, asked people to swap from like AoE builds, single target builds, which this raid actually has a lot of this, where there's like technically AoE, but you should be playing single target. Like there's like
Yeah.
one boss. There's two bosses that you can justify playing AoE on, I think. Primal
Mhm.
Council, because it's
Yeah.
literally just 4 target stacked
The-
cleave. And then a handful of people on Diurna.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the ad group on Diurna, you don't want everybody in AoE spec, because then like you do have a huge single target check in phase 2,
Right.
but you do want some people in AoE spec to make sure those ads die. So like I feel like there's a little bit of a balance there on Diurna, and like having a couple people like a Windwalker and a Feral Druid kind of thing in the ad group just go nuts on the AoE, and everybody else single targets the prio ad is like
Yeah.
maybe correct. But I haven't pulled that boss yet because we haven't killed Dathea.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll
Uh,
be. Yeah, yeah, we haven't. Yeah, we didn't really. I think we did a little bit about like our goal was really just to live. So we had like 45 minutes by the time we got Kurog down in our raid night to pull.
yeah,
Um, Dathea. And so I was just sort of like learning the movement, like some of the initial timers and how like what marks you want to duplicate, what marks you don't want to duplicate, right?
Yeah.
With the sets that go out. So it
Yeah.
was it was good. It was good. It was good to get Kurog down. It was super like it was one of those fights. I don't know if you ever get this in your guild, but like where you're like halfway through your raid night, you think you should have killed this boss by now, and you're just not. And there's
Yeah.
like that slight dip in morale where you're just like, I don't think we're killing this tonight. It's gonna be another week. This is awful.
Yeah.
Um
Definitely been
eh,
there. But that
yeah.
was kind of our Sinarth, right? Where like we went into Sinarth expecting to kind of knock it out pretty quickly,
Hmm.
and just like loved it. And it went from being like wiping in phase 2 multiple times in the first 5 pulls to
Yeah.
taking 2.5 hours to kill it,
Yeah.
and a half 3 hours to kill it. And that's like you cross that point where it's like we are not really getting a lot of time on the next boss this week. Like we
Yeah.
killed Senarth, we knew we could, but we did not get very much time on Kurog that week.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, one more thing. Actually, on Kurog, we switched our tank setup in the Earth phase. We were having our Demon Hunter tank the ad, which is just like we were just YOLOing it. So he just like tanked the ad because that's he taunted it first on the first time we got there.
Hmm.
So he was the ad tank now, right?
Yeah.
Um, we switched it to being me on a Blood DK because we actually read that part of the dungeon journal, and or I read that part of the dungeon journal, and the the thing that it does, its frontal applies like a 500k healing absorb to everybody that it hits,
Right. Yeah.
which for a demon hunter is like kind of problematic.
Hmm.
For a blood DK though, you just hit death strike and you're done.
Yeah. It gets
Pretty
rid of it.
much
Yeah.
just like get rid of it. Which is uh Blood DK was 100% like the correct progression choice for me this tier. Like
Yeah.
it's just so good this tier.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but also, uh, just like as a kind of a warning for anybody that's progressing that on any tank, if you are the ad tank, the Earth phase is way, way, way more intense.
Yeah.
You take so much more damage, and even though like Death Strike just gets rid of the healing absorb, sometimes you get like I got effectively global a couple times. One time it actually killed me because I had blown perk earlier on something unnecessarily, but
Hmm.
um, where you get this healing absorb for your whole health bar. The ads are up, the like small ads that actually
Yeah.
really do hurt. You're tanking the boss, you're tanking the ad, and you just like all of it happens at once, and your health bar just goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny that you say that because we turned to like just literally pre-externaling tanks for the second set of ads just because
Yeah,
it was like we just needed it
justifiably.
there. Yeah. Just it didn't wait for them to call for anything. It was just like, all right, ads are spawning, wait like 2 seconds. And as you see like two or three of them in there, just hit your external.
Yeah,
Right. And then you're
yeah.
good. So
We were so I was we had our DPS DK using Abomination's Limb on the first set of ads in the phase, and I was using mine on the second set. And
mhm.
like on the second set, I was like doing that. I was hitting Dancing Rune Weapon, which is also like a super good. The auto attacks are the main damage source there. You just like parry 70% of them. But then you can get unlucky and you like get the 30% roll 3 times in a row, and you're like in purgatory now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You just been crushed. Yeah.
yeah, but that fight, that phase went from like entirely chill to just insanely stressful just by having me swap to taking the ad.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, we did one tank swap in the frost phase. We changed like the order so that when you did the overlap of the boss and the ad doing like the circles, our
Yeah,
warrior had it like that they could like leap out and then like charge back in
I
to move
just
the ad off to the side.
I just realized I'm a complete. So we were trying. I had heard this is incorrect. I'm going to preface
Yeah,
this with this is incorrect. I had
yeah,
heard that you could Blessing of Freedom the tank that takes the frost ad out in the final phase and
yeah.
have them not get frozen from being alone.
No, it doesn't. Yeah,
That does
we
not
tried it
work.
too. Yeah,
That does not work. Um, but I also just realized I'm a moron. I can just taunt the ad as a DK and walk out there, and
yeah,
even if AMS doesn't prevent the application of the stun, IBF.
Yeah,
Like
you
you
can
can
yeah, you
just
can nice
IBF
round,
it
yeah.
and walk back.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
AMS does prevent you from getting stunned by the like orbs coming out of the ad, so you can like walk out there and then just like hit AMS and walk back and ignore anything.
Everything that's happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
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 we ended up doing it with our warrior just because it was more consistent with
yeah,
that. But yeah, we tried the freedom strat. I think we tried bopping and taunting to remove it, which
yeah.
didn't work.
We
So
we
yeah.
were so we got there like twice, and the first time we didn't reach that point, and
Yep.
the second time we just killed it, even though my co tank died because I baited him with the blessing of freedom thing.
Nice. Nice.
Um, but we were talking about like maybe he goes out there, and even if he gets frozen, like we just have a priest grip him because he won't,
Yeah.
like, even if he gets gripped through an orb, he won't die. He'll
Yeah,
just
from it,
be
yeah.
stunned on the ranged pile, which is fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, there's no issue there. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. That final phase is it's rough. Like that movement. That part is like so stressful. Even I mean, I guess the whole fight is sort of stressful, but that part even for a healer, because like you're half looking at your frames, half looking at your feet, and just like your eyes
Yeah,
are in like four different places, it feels like. So
everything after phase one. Well, okay, after phase one, pretty much everything is chill to tank. If you're the earth ad tank in the
yeah.
earth phase, then that gets kind of spicy. Especially like our threat on the small ads is like kind of all over the place. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's my co tank, sometimes it's like neither of us in the evokers got to like run for their lives. Um,
Yeah,
well, actually, side note, evoker mastery needs to have like a negative threat modifier on it. It is
yeah.
so ridiculous. Please.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the first phase, like the getting almost murdered by dance all the time is fun,
Yeah.
and the storm thing is awful.
Yeah. No, the start, yeah.
Oh,
No, but sorry.
small prediction. I think that we get some Kurog changes with 10.05. I think we see that announcement on Monday.
Do you think so?
I think so. It's my prediction. Monday, January 23rd, we will see Kurog changes.
Yeah, I wonder too if we see Dathea changes. There's only been well, when we were rating Thursday, there had only been like 100 or so Dathea kills, I feel like.
A lot
As I
of
was looking at.
guilds go Kurog first because like the conventional wisdom is that Kurog is just a numbers check, and it's not just a
Yeah.
numbers check, but it's like way more of a numbers check than a mechanics check. If you can
Right,
do the
right, right.
dance in phase one, then pretty much you've done all of the complexity of the fight as far as like a DPS player is concerned.
Hmm.
Whereas like Dathea has a lot more mechanically going on.
Hmm.
So most people went Kurog first. And Kurog is, like you were saying, is a real numbers check the whole way through.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
so
there's a ton more kills now on Dathea. But yeah. Like 323 according to Warcraft logs.
yeah,
But but yeah, I was thinking, yeah, Kurog probably makes sense. Although like honestly, they haven't touched really any of the bosses. And I feel like
yeah,
too, there's still like what was our raids? Let me just look something up because our raids item level for the Kurog kill, like we have a ton of room to grow. Your item level was 411, and so like Mythic's still dropping 415.
right.
Like
It's such a strange tier actually from a like gear progression standpoint.
yeah,
Um, like people in my guild have gone the hardest that they have ever gone ever for like gear,
mm-hmm,
and we still have a ton of room to grow in terms of eye
yeah,
level.
yeah.
Which on the one hand means that like when we come back and we do these bosses on farm and we're eye level 420,
You
um,
joke.
it's
I'm
gonna be
so excited.
great. That's gonna
Yeah.
make farm so much easier. And also actually, most of these bosses get a lot easier with damage, like a lot easier. This is not like we're
I
not dealing with stuff like in Sepulcher where almost nothing got easier with damage. You had like once you crossed the threshold with Anduin that you could one phase it, that was significantly easier.
mm-hmm,
Jailer got significantly easier once you cross certain breakpoints, and you could like
yep.
just skip most of phase three and all of phase four.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then like five of them got easy when you could like
Yeah.
two phase that.
Yeah. It just
But,
got shorter.
but beyond that, like they didn't really get easier in meaningful ways with increased damage. Whereas like Dathea, like more damage just means you skip later platforms.
Yeah,
Um,
which is good. Yeah,
Kurog, like the ad
like ads
just
become a little.
dying. Yeah,
Yeah, it becomes like a non-issue, which is easy. Yeah, and like yeah, Teros too. Like you missed that sort of final. Like we actually killed Teros before. Like we didn't cleave the final set of spikes on Teros this week.
yeah, we did the same
So
thing.
like we were really far ahead there. So
Last week we killed it with a DPS dead the whole time, so that was fun.
oh nice.
In enrage, deep in enrage. It was slower than our first kill, but you know we got
Got it down.
there.
You got it down. You got it down. Nice. But yeah. This I think this tier. I think it's a combination too of like first tier, right, which you always sort of see that you start just so much lower anyway,
Yeah,
and sort of get to raise up, and then yeah, just yeah. I think these fights will be fun once you have some gear. So
yeah. I kind of am curious if so. There's two pieces of it, right? Like we started at a lower island level.
mm,
There's also like the gear acquisition rate, and it feels so strange that like we can do 20s for I guess 20s drop the end of Dungeon Cash 405.
or it was I thought it was 415, and then you could proc 421 even from your thing. I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was that low. I'll be honest with you, but let me see.
that's what I'm like
Yeah,
double.
you're right. Yeah, 20s or 405. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you can get 405s from that, which I guess is like I guess that's probably actually why we are still on this gear curve.
Yeah.
Because like 20s are a 405, 15s are like 398 or something.
Yeah.
So we're like 15 high levels above that, above of what a 15 drops.
Mhm.
Actually, 16s are 398, 15s are like 395. Like that's crazy. So we are literally 15 high levels over what a 15 drops, and that's probably why we're still like got so much room for additional eye level.
Yeah.
Just because like Mythic Plus, the end of dungeon stuff just isn't that compelling.
Yeah. And it's also like 20s are not
Yeah,
easy, right? Like
yeah.
it's not like just you spam 15s like you used to do, and it'll be
We
fine like week one. So
I was doing keys before this, which I had internet issues. So we were maybe not sure if the podcast was happening today, but we went into Temple of Jade Serpent and we do the first pull and like everything's fine. We get into the second pull and everything's fine. We get into the third pull and I like death grip some dudes in and I go to death grip a second dude and just like nothing happens. Just nothing
nice.
happens. Everything is stopped. There's a swirly under me that hasn't gone away yet that should have.
That's so funny.
And then everything catches up and 4 people are dead.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, the gear stuff it's a nice change of pace, right? Because I think we'll see probably nerfs. I think that too just causes maybe nerfs to slow down a bit. Like I hear your
Yeah,
prediction for Kurog, but like I would almost think you see nerfs to the bosses before Kurog, before they hit Kurog right now.
I think they'll hit Kurog
Mhm.
because of the storm tech. I think
That's
they'll hit
true.
it because
That's
it's
true.
like it's not the intended strat. It's a very frustrating strat. Like it
Yeah.
actually wasn't that frustrating for us because my co-tech nailed it. Like
Right, right, right.
not
Yeah.
from the first pull, but like we had like our hour and a half on it the first night where we didn't get it a single time, and we came back in and he missed it like once since
Yeah.
then.
Worked on it, yeah. Worked on the
and
timing, yeah.
and so um yeah, but I think Kurog specifically because like that is really frustrating. That
Yeah.
mechanic I think is the only reason Kurog eats it.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, we'll I guess we'll see. But yeah, I expect some level of nerfs, particularly to like the new. I think you're right. There'll be some changes. But probably I feel like it's probably to some of the earlier bosses than the Datheas and
Yeah,
Broodkeeper. Well, I don't think we see any changes to Broodkeeper, honestly, unless it's just an overall numbers reduction, right?
I
So
wouldn't be surprised if we get to the end of the tier and there are zero changes to Brute.
yeah, the fight's just solid. Just really, really solid.
That
So
was it's funny because that's the one that everybody was like, oh, I'm gonna hate that. I'm gonna hate that fight. That's gonna be an awful fight when doing it on
yeah.
PTR. Then we come in and it's like the most perfectly fight that everybody's like, yeah, this is fine. we can do this.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, well, cool. Any other prog stuff from your side? Um,
Nope, still trucking along. We have all night on Dathea tonight. Um,
nice.
and fingers crossed we can get our kill.
Nice. Well, cool. Well, I guess we can cover a couple things that happened over the past week before we talk a little bit about some of the maybe the stuff we didn't cover too much in the patch for the week. So, this week in non-retail news, we don't typically talk about other games, but Ulduar was released for Wrathlish King Classic, and it was cleared in like what 45 minutes by old Beef Bar.
Hour and
Um,
18 minutes. Hour
or
and
an
18.
hour and eight. Sorry, hour and 18
The
minutes.
raid opened at 6 o'clock Eastern time. They got
Mhm.
their final kill at 7:17 and 42 seconds.
They
And
crushed it.
the next best was Progress at 7:29.
Oh
So
wow.
almost 15 minutes later, which is like, on the one hand, that's like, in the scale of this, of like an hour, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But in the scale of like
I
a typical world first race, like imagine if Echo and Limit like killed the boss 15 minutes apart. Like
we
they were
so
both
hype.
raiding, the hotfix goes in, and just it's like who is currently in a like Echo. Like imagine if that was it. Instead, it's like hotfix goes in, Limit is like just starting a pull, so they don't have the hotfix yet because the boss has to reset for it. But
Yeah.
Echo is like between pulls, and just imagine if that were the deciding factor.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be crazy. But yeah, no, they Beef Bard crushed Ulduar to take world first over everything, which I think is really cool. So um I'll tell you, this is the first one of the first raids that I remember vividly, like my guild like not being able to kill certain things. Right?
Yeah,
Like we did it like early on, like when I did classic rating, when I rated in classic, like we didn't clear Nax 40 at the time, but we
yeah,
got to four horsemen and then just didn't have the tanks to do four horsemen. So we sort
right,
of went and did everything
right,
else. But um and that was fine because I was like new or whatever. But like we went through all of BC, cleared all of BC, it was great. Um and then got to Wrath and I was like, holy hell. like
yeah,
like firefighter is absolutely insane.
yeah.
Um, like those fights were just nuts. But yeah, no, this is like to me, like I think Ulduar is probably one of my favorite, like not one of my favorites, but actually yeah, so one of my like favorite overall raids. Right? I
Yeah.
think there's one fight that really stands out, but
It's one of
doing it
those
is super
things
cool.
where like I would like to do Ulduar, but also I don't want to invest the amount of time into Wrath Classic to do Ulduar.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
I you need.
I enjoy the like leveling experience in Classic, and I still do,
Mhm.
but I don't really like the end game. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna lie. Like heroic dungeons are just not with the way people do them now. Like I actually had a good time with like doing heroics back in original BC,
uh huh,
but like that's with people that don't know what they're doing. Like back in the day where we thought we needed to CC like 3 of the 4 mobs in the pack so we could, make it through Sethek halls.
yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
and then you go back and like TBC Classic happens, and all the like classic endings are like, oh, back in my day we had to CC mobs. You just
Yeah,
have people like pulling wall to
like
wall.
everything. Yeah,
Everything just wall to wall. Um,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah.
So one of the interesting things, so like I worked on some of the support for this at Warcraft Logs, and Ulduar is the one raid that has really, really pervasive hard modes that are
Hmm.
optional. They're not real difficulties. You like do them like during the fight. You trigger them. So like on XTO2, you kill the like he goes into the heart phase. If you kill the heart, then you turn on hard mode. He heals to full, and he has new mechanics, and then you do
Yep.
that version of the fight. Um, and so that it is the only raid that's like this. There's like
Yeah.
Sartharian that technically also has this, but Sartharian is like a one-off and like not a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, so we had to do some really new stuff to track like people's progression because people want to like feel like they're continuing to progress after they've killed all the bosses on like and there's
Yeah.
achievements for the higher ones, right? Like the actual like world first tier for Beef Bar is doing Yogg Zero Light and doing Algalon, which are both hard mode bosses. So we had a bunch of new work to do to support hard modes, which was very interesting. We touched a lot of things we don't normally touch, like all-star point calculations, which briefly broke this week because we made a mistake.
Nice.
Wasn't me this time, but
all right, well, we'll see. I bet you there was part of your fingerprints on that break somewhere.
I mean, you can find some.
Yeah. No, I thought it was interesting because I read, I mean, like Warcraft logs. I won't say you guys, so I know you weren't there, but Warcraft logs put out like that big, like a huge post on like how they were doing the scoring, and I thought that was so funny that not funny, but it was to me, it's almost like you have like Warcraft logs as the gatekeeper for what is considered world first, which is such a different.
Right.
Not, I
So
think gatekeeper has negative connotation. I don't mean
right.
it negatively. I just mean like you need Warcraft logs to set up something to say what guild is first.
Yeah.
Because if not, everyone will fight about exactly who's
Right.
first, right?
I mean, basically, what it boiled down to is we looked at what the guilds that were actually like. We looked at two things, right? It's like what are the actual world first guilds consider world first,
Yeah.
and then what do like regular guilds consider like finishing the raid, right?
Uh-huh.
And pretty much universally, it was you do every boss on hard mode, you kill Algalon.
Yeah.
And that's like what it means to finish the raid. And so then for the world first guilds, they're like, we're going for also server first titles. They're going for their Death's Demise. They're going for, I don't remember if there's a title. There's a title for Algalon, isn't there?
I believe so. I don't
Like
remember
Celestial
what it is.
Defender or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like, well, it would be great if the progression rules aligned with us also getting server first titles. And so that this does, like, getting world first on Warcraft logs means you got Death's Demise and you got Algalon.
Gotcha.
So there's that, which is, so it's not like we didn't like out of nowhere pick that. It was more of like, what is the community doing? Okay, we're gonna make what the community is doing anyway, kind of like our measurement of progression. But that also is like every like the some bosses have like 5 hard mode or 5 difficulty levels effectively. You have like just doing it the normal way, and then actually Yogg is a great example of this. Yogg, you can do it with all the keepers, or you can do it 3 or 2 or 1 or no keepers.
Yeah.
You can do it 5 different difficulty levels, and so basically every boss ends up being like on a 1 to 5 points depending on which hard mode level you did it on. And
That's awesome.
the bosses, there's 2 bosses with no hard mode levels, right, or 3. They're just worth 1. But then Algalon is just like a hard mode by himself, so he's just worth 5.
5, yeah. Regardless.
And this is all, if anybody is actually curious, this is all laid out in the Warcraft logs site. Like you can go to the classic site and like click there's a big file on the front page that has the rules. But I went through all of that because I think that the chart of progress for this is actually really, really interesting. We have like a histogram of like how many points each guild has gotten, and this is like normally what this would show is just how many boss kills you have, except now it's points. And there's a big, like most guilds have just like been clearing through the normal difficulties of the bosses, and you see that because like this is a 13 boss raid without Algalon, and most guilds are at 13 points or below, and you have like 100 guilds at 14 points, and then beyond that there's like 200 or 300 guilds total that have done hard modes, and like 10% of those actually have full cleared all the hard modes, everything. But it's just like a really interesting, like this is such a fun thing to look at, where it's like look at how the gulf between like regular players and the people that are like speed running stuff in classic now.
Yeah,
because these top guilds are going to turn around and they're going to do speed running starting next week because they've already finished progression. But everybody else is going to be doing progression still. Like they're going to be working on, maybe they didn't get any of the hard modes. Maybe they come back and they do Heartbreaker and Firefighter, and then the next week they get like the Thorim one and the Hodir one. What those are.
Oh yeah, like the frozen. Yeah,
which actually,
I know.
the is it Thorum that breaks the cache or Hodir that breaks the cache? Whichever one breaks the cache. There's a bug right now, like an actual in-game bug, that he can turn friendly at the end of the fight, and
Uh-huh.
then turn around and break the cache
Anyway. Oh
anyway,
no.
even if you technically completed the hard mode, and then
Oh,
you
that's
don't get your
awful.
achievement or anything. So
That's
yeah,
rough. That is rough. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, shout out to Beef Bar for getting through it, and yeah, the Ulduar is it's fun. So if yeah, I have the same thing that you have, which is like I would love to do Ulduar. I don't want to get to the point where I can do Ulduar.
right, right.
Like that sort of gear up part of it is not something yeah, I want to engage with it all. So but cool. So moving on, a little bit of I'll say sad news in the grand scheme of things. So we have if you remember, I think we talked about this before the holidays, but Blizzard China, or like the services, Blizzard services in China were going to be shut down effective I think it's January 23rd or 22nd or 23rd. Um and this is a big deal. I think we talked about it at the time, but like having your game, like no Western company can operate a game within China. You essentially have to partner with a studio inside of China or a company inside of China to get your game published and active there. And Blizzard and NetEase was the Chinese company that supported Blizzard. Basically had a falling out, you could say. Like Blizzard didn't want to renew their agreement, and so the 22nd was sort of the, or sorry, 24th was sort of the final day. And some news had come out, uh, I guess earlier last week around the fact that Blizzard was trying to resurrect the sort of deal between them and NetEase. Um, not very didn't go very well, we'll say. And primarily
Negotiations
because
broke down.
yeah, you could say that. So, and the reason we know this is because NetEase live streamed themselves taking like axes and like bats to the large they built a large like what's the name of the axe? The name of Hellscream's axe.
Oh, Gorehal.
Uh Gorehal. They have like a large Gorehal, I think it is, statue in front of their building. And NetEase live streamed themselves basically breaking it like down, like destroying it.
Yeah,
And then like so, Blizzard came out with their post about how like, oh, we're sorry to the fans. We tried to make this work. We couldn't. And then NetEase fired back with their post, which is basically like Blizzard tried to strong arm us into a bad deal, and so we're just never working with them again. Um, which sucks if you're a player in China,
yeah,
because like at that point, like you don't have the ability to, we'll say, play on Chinese realms, right? Everything, and this isn't just a WoW thing. This is every Blizzard game. So it's WoW,
right.
Hearthstone, Overwatch. Um, I think maybe even Star. I don't know if they operate in StarCraft in that region, but I mean,
Yeah,
assuming StarCraft is also on that list. So,
um,
but not
yeah,
Diablo Immortal, by the way.
yeah. Diablo
I think
Immortal
Diablo,
is a different deal.
yeah, different deal. So you can still play
Same
that
company
money
is
grabbing.
different deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like I personally, I mean, I think it's obvious that the real losers here are just the players in China. Like they're the ones that really are getting the short end of the stick. I would feel weird being like either pro Blizzard or pro NetEase because I just like
I'm not. Yeah,
like
I don't think there's not a good guy on either side here. This is just
yeah,
two companies squabbling over money, right? And like the
yeah,
players are the ones that get screwed. So
yeah, um, yeah, yeah. However,
that's all it is.
in the greatest possible irony, a bunch of Chinese players are migrating to Taiwanese realms.
So funny.
Um,
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh yeah, because they're not governed. Yep,
because
that makes sense.
they don't have to go through the Chinese government
Yeah,
for operations in Taiwan, and it's relatively close in terms of location.
yep,
Lots of language overlap.
yep, yeah.
So the Taiwanese realms, they had to like spin up new realms. They're all like max capacity.
That's so funny.
Uh,
Yeah, that's crazy. And I too the fun like, and again like you can tell this was sort of hastily put together because I think Blizzard thought they had a. I wonder if Blizzard thought they had another partner lined up and just that deal fell through, which means they had to sort of scramble to go back to NetEase. But there is a service that Blizzard put together for you to save your character if it's on a Chinese realm.
right.
I heard that's not working, by the way.
Yeah.
Like as of like mid last week, that service was still not working 100%. So like you might have players who can't save characters they've played for, I however long. Because what, WoW
Uh,
didn't go to
WoW
WoW
came out
didn't
in
go to
China at the end of Wrath.
yeah. So it's just been it hasn't been I was gonna say 15 years, but it's been a long time, like if that's where you started. So
Yeah,
um yeah, no, it's a terrible situation for the players, and it sort of really sucks for them. And this is just two companies who, can't, I don't know, probably fighting over money at the end of the day, right? Or like,
yeah,
royalties, yeah, whatever it ends up
I
being.
mean,
So
at the end of the day, it is money, whether it's
yeah,
royalties or terms of the contract or something else. At the end of the day, it's like either money now or money later.
yeah, yeah. So that's awful. But if you're a player in China, it sounds like you can potentially migrate to some Taiwanese realms, and
Yeah,
continue to play, really start over, but at least continue to play.
yeah,
Um, so cool. So moving on to other not good news for old Blizzard from the last week. There's been a ton of server instability issues for some of the larger realms in both America and the EU. Um, and so I don't know if you're on Area 52, which I think
yeah.
is one of the largest affected realms by this, but there was
We
basically a
didn't
ton.
forgot
Oh,
to bring
sorry.
this up last week as well, which is when the
Yeah.
issues were really bad. So last week, like not this reset, the previous reset was so bad that the weekday team in our guild that raised Tuesday, Wednesday basically lost all of their progression time.
Gosh, that's awful.
They got a friend that had a character on like I don't know Thrall or something, Duratar, some
Hmm.
like Thrall's a relatively large realm, but it's not like one of the mega realms. Duratar is like a new player server.
Yeah.
um, and they got them to like give like start an instance, and they went in their instance, and that's how they got around the instability because it technically wasn't like associated with Area 52.
Yeah.
But they still lost like 2.5 hours on their first raid night, and like another 2 hours on the next raid night. So they just like lost half their raid week, got through
Yeah.
reclear, and had like 30 minutes to put into Kurog,
Awful. Yeah.
and just like ended up just a week behind basically because of that, which really sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, and the issue, just so if you guys aren't aware, is like basically raids were like being auto disbanded.
Yeah,
Like, or like just like I think instances were crashing too at certain times. So there's a
yep,
bunch of just like essentially like you said, instability issues within the instance servers for the larger realm. So yeah, it's awful. I haven't heard of anything this reset though. So I think it seems like Blizzard has gotten whatever that issue was under control.
yeah.
But it very much reminds me of our Denathrius progression, where we were getting put into, I think it was Denathrius. It was one boss where we were getting, it might have been even in BFA, but we were getting put into Singapore's instance servers through
Ooh,
zoning in and having like 300 ping,
amazing.
trying to do, yeah. It might have actually been Nazoth, if I remember correctly. And like there's nothing we could do, like nothing we figured out how to do about it. We'd soft reset the instance, come back up, and still 300 ping. So we lost like a week or two to that. So
That sucks. I mean, at least like, all right, boomer take here. 300 ping is very playable in World of Warcraft. It's not
yeah,
pleasant, but it is very playable. If it's a consistent 300 ping, you're fine.
yeah, yeah. I
Like
think our issue was twofold. It was like we weren't used to playing with it, and then also it wasn't consistent in that
right,
like we would get
that's
spikes every once in a
that's
while,
the big issue
which is
because
yeah,
like if you're like mostly at 300 ping and then it'll occasionally like drop for a second or two, that second or two is what gets you. That's like where you get hit by a swirly, you like on Nizoth, you lose all your sanity, you like don't move Psychus to the right spot, like whatever it is, that 1 to 2 seconds can like completely wreck your pull.
yeah. Yeah. So, but it sounds like Blizzard's gotten at least that issue under control. I haven't seen any
Yeah.
like
So that
posts this week. So,
this is something that um was happening up until like Tuesday, this reset, and then they restarted a bunch of servers on like Tuesday and Wednesday, and it seems to mostly have gone away.
mhm.
Um I have not had it, like I had it happen in a dungeon on Tuesday. I've not had it happen since.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So, hopefully all of those technical issues are cleared up, and yeah, we can yeah, there's no more random disconnects. Losing raid nights is always awful. So,
Yeah, that
um
is.
Just a real quick one here. Next up is there is a new subscription promotion. So if you, like WoW likes to do, if you have a 6 month or in this case year long subscription, you will be receiving a awesome new bunny rabbit mount. It is of course Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year. It is the year we're going into the year of the rabbit, and so you get a cool little rabbit mount basically. So
They just
um,
did like a year-long promotion at the
yeah,
beginning,
so you
like
actually
launch of Dragonflight, which is very funny.
yeah. But and you get this mount too with
Yeah,
like if you have that year long promotion, this counts
yeah.
for this promotion too. So yeah, the mounts it's just a bunny rabbit, like a blue bunny rabbit with like carrots on its saddlebags and you sort of ride it around. It's not too interesting. It also does not have wings, so it does the whole floaty run thing to fly, which I hate. So uh this mount will not be used by me.
Yeah.
But
Well,
speaking of mounts, oh
also,
sorry,
it's not a
sorry.
dragon riding mount, so you're not using it to fly anyway.
Well, I used to fly to like Quarter Stars or
Okay,
Halls of
okay.
Valor.
All right.
Um, but to be fair, I get summoned there anyway because I'm lazy. Um, but I will say, mount wise, speaking of just mounts in general, I did my first ever in like years dungeon achievement run and got
Oh, really?
all the dungeon achievements to get the what is it, shellac mount, the
The
slug
lava
mount.
slug?
Lava Slug,
Yeah,
best decision of my life. That thing is so cool.
yeah,
It does like this super cool jump. It's like special move is like spins like a top. Like
yeah,
that mount's amazing. So
yeah.
I recommend. And I also think it's the best color version of it. I think there's other snail mounts. They're different colored, but I think the dungeon meta achievement is like the best color from my perspective. So
I'm just using
um,
my jailer mount. I got that. I was the last person on our team to get that. We
oh
actually,
really?
technically, there's one other person that didn't get it,
Hmm.
and they were offered it, and they were like, "No, I would rather do a sale." Okay, we'll
Gotcha.
sell it.
That's awesome. That's funny. Yeah, no, yeah, it's I've put that one down my rotation, which I'll probably never use it because I don't think there's any zones left that are just ground only that you'd use it in, but because
Yeah,
it doesn't fly, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, um,
you'll use it
yeah,
in keys. You know,
that's true.
or to
That's
stars, you
true.
can't fly.
That's true. That's true. Um, so yeah, so that is uh so that's the mount stuff.
Yeah,
Quick aside. Um, one final, or maybe two or three, two final things before we get into sort of like
yeah.
the 10.0.5
I think these go
stuff.
together.
Yeah, so these next two things a little bit go together. So Naguura of World First Method fame and just general Liquid caster person, high end Mythic Plus player person, interviewed one of the lead designers for Dungeons, or sorry, lead encounter designer, Matt Villers, and she interviewed Matt about Mythic Plus in general. So it's a pretty short interview. It's only about 30 minutes. So shorter. Well, I guess most interviews are 30 minutes maybe, but it felt shorter as I went through it than like the last like Morgan or Ian interviews that had come out. And they sort of talk about a bunch of different Mythics Plus stuff like philosophy, some of the affixes, like some of the balancing stuff, and um, there's a couple of interesting things, right? Like a lot of times, like she asked a little bit about like RP in dungeons, like
Yeah,
when that's appropriate, when it's not. And Matt, of course, was like, well, we take it out when it makes sense, but sometimes we leave it in because, it's just a part of the dungeon. And like the reference now is of course the Halls of Valor, the final two boss,
yeah,
RP, particularly the third boss RP and how long that takes.
yeah,
And the idea and like his Matt's response was basically like it's just iconic. Like it's something that like as design team, like we didn't think we didn't want to take out because it's just, such a big part of the dungeon.
yeah.
Um
Halls of Valor, I honestly like don't mind the Halls of Valor one because of that. Like it is like the no, I am God King Skovor
yeah,
at the
yeah.
end. Like okay, all right. Um, they do mention that like they took out some from Tazavesh.
Mhm.
Um, they left the booty based stuff in case people were pulling trash in a ring of booty in Freehold. They were pulling
Yeah.
trash during the RP, so like people were finding clever ways to do things during the RP, and like that's you know that's
What
fine.
they want, yeah. Mhm.
But it is on their radar, so
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see.
Yeah, we'll see if they make any changes. It's depending on particularly on what the next set of dungeons is for like season 2.
Yeah,
If there's any sort of big RP moments. They also talk a little bit about randomness, which I think is cool. So the I don't know if you remember, I didn't remember this by the way. But Fenrir in Halls, speaking of Halls of Valor,
yeah,
Fenrir's position can be in one of two positions, basically on the left or the right side in the normal dungeon.
yeah,
But in Mythic Plus, that boss is always on the right side.
yep,
So basically, they've taken some level of randomness out of like where things can spawn, or like I think there's probably a couple of other examples even in the current dungeons where things could be in multiple places in the normal dungeon, but if you're
right,
doing a Mythic Plus, it's always in that one position.
yeah.
I had another example off the top of my head when I was reading this, when he was answering this. I was like, it's also this boss, but I can't remember. Um,
There's kind of a counterexample to that. There's randomness in Quarter Stars with which um, profession items you get access to.
There is, yeah. So there is yeah,
Like
which
you always have that alchemy one, which is the most important one.
yep,
But then
yeah, for
there's
the first
also
boss there.
there's 3 that impact routing, or 4. There's jewel crafting, one for healers, one for leather workers, and one for,
Mhm.
and each of those pull a mini boss. And I don't think you can have more than 2 up at once. I've never seen more than 2 up at once. Maybe
No,
you
it's
can
only
get
2,
3,
yeah.
but you're not guaranteed to have 2.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can have to pull an extra enforcer that you like. A lot of the time, you will get 2 of the 4, but sometimes you won't.
Yeah, which I mean it's a yeah, I guess that too. There's also randomness in the enforcer spawns, which could
Yeah,
dictate how much trash you pull and all that stuff. So yeah, maybe quarter stars isn't yeah, maybe they should have talked about maybe that one too, about reeling that in. So so yeah, so there was we talked a little bit about that, and then talked a little bit about the affix, the seasonal affix, and just I think affixes in general, right?
yeah,
And the funny thing about thundering is, so Matt's response at the time was essentially like, they're still like looking at feedback on thundering, particularly when we talk about tanks getting the debuff, and the fact that like one of the biggest issues with tanks getting it is like there's a bunch of frontals. You play most dungeons not trying to stand on the tank unless there's a specific mechanic you're doing,
yeah,
and now you're asking DPS or a healer to like figure out when a frontal or when something like is going to cleave you is not going to happen so you can clear the tank quickly.
yeah,
And it always changed, right? So there was a hot fix this week, and we'll probably talk
yeah.
about this
That's
here,
why this goes
where
together.
yeah, there was a hot fix this week that basically sort of limited some of the randomization. So the way that thundering works now is there is always 2 positive charges and always 3 negative charges on the group.
Positive is
And the
blue,
tank
negative is red.
yep. So I'll use colors. Sorry. So, and tanks will always receive a negative or red charge. So they basically limited. There's still some randomness in what DPS and healers get, but your tank will always be, red, and or negative.
Which means that
And so
you can just never clear the tank and you're fine.
exactly,
It's not for pugs. It's probably correct, right? It's probably
yeah,
just correct to just never clear the tank, but it's also not optimal in that you're giving like your tank full uptime on the DPS buff, which like sure I'll take it,
right,
but
right, right,
also it is better if your healer has the extra healing uptime or healing buff on a boss like the second in Temple of Jade Serpent or the last one in Temple of Jade Serpent,
yeah,
um, or you give the DPS extra uptime on other bosses with relevant DPS checks.
yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah. So there is that component of it, but this should hopefully make it slightly simpler to deal with.
Yeah,
So you can like, have a buddy system or like, if someone feels comfortable clearing the tank, they can. But
yeah,
they
yeah,
always know that like the tank, if you're positive or have the blue buff, the tank's always an available target, but there's, you're gonna go to
yeah,
the healer or DPS.
yeah.
So
Uh, kind of also
sorry.
connected to Thundering, they had the conversation about affixes more in general, and I don't think there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Like they talked about some of the changes they made, and like some like, oh, we could potentially like take some out of rotation, put others in, and like
Yeah.
nothing concrete. Except they talked about affixes on bosses, and this is a good point that I hadn't really thought about.
Hmm.
Thundering is the first Mythic Plus affix that is active on bosses, unless you are pulling trash onto bosses. Like there's infamous stuff like Sanguine under a boss, like you remember
Yeah.
in Whitecrest Manor doing that room and
Oh yeah.
accidentally having Sanguine spawn under the immobile boss in the pig
Yeah.
room. Yeah, that was always fun. Um, and like they've made sanguine not heal bosses. I've never been brave enough to try it.
Yeah.
And so like thundering is the first one that has impacted bosses, and bosses are so much more complex in general than
Hmm.
trash, like individual trash mobs. Um, at the same time, if you do a trash pack, I feel like most trash packs are more complex than most bosses in newer dungeons.
It's specifically this expansion. Yeah. Like
I mean, I
the
think the past three, like the doing the old dungeons is way different. Like
mhm.
Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, definitely not. Temple of Jade Serpent, definitely not.
No, yeah.
But doing like Ruby Life Pools, or even going back doing the other side, you know, doing Freehold, not really, but
Sure.
you know, Temple of the Storms,
Yeah.
called Shrine of the Storms. That's it, and stuff like Underrot, where there's just a lot going on trash.
Huh.
And then bosses are like a break from the complexity.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I think yeah, nowadays it's yeah, even the trash is could be as complex depending on how you do the packs. And even if it's just a single pack, right? You're not doing crazy like 2 or 3 pulls, right? You're doing like a single pull can have multiple casters, multiple things to kick or
Yeah,
dodge and yeah. No, I get that. And yeah. Yeah, but the comment on thundering was interesting too because I mean as a part of that comment they brought up faded raids, which is like
yeah,
the I think still like, you know, hopefully they get better at making it fixes that don't make me want to like rip my hair out.
yeah.
I'm
I,
like,
and like I think that's a big difference too. Like dungeon bosses are a significant step down in complexity from raid bosses, and
mhm,
also thundering is a significant step down in complexity from the faded affixes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we'll see what we. I mean, we'll see what we get as our season 2 affix probably, hopefully shortly. But yeah, so they talked a little bit about that, and then they had a big discussion on like just balance in general, both dungeon balance and class balance. The class balance discussion was pretty non-interesting. If you have like a couple brain cells and realize like, hey, most of the reasons people don't or do 20s on a single class is not because other classes can't do it, it's just because it's quote unquote easier as termed by the community, right? Like
Yeah,
they talk about perception being like a huge reason that like a lot of people say one spec is bad over another spec.
yeah. I mean
Um,
that literally played out this tier with Brewmaster, where unironically, Brewmaster was one of the stronger choices for the later bosses in the raid, but
yeah.
was not one of the stronger choices in Mythic Plus. It was like very playable,
Hmm.
not one of the stronger choices, much harder to play than some of the stronger choices.
Right.
Um, but then like it got buffed. It's gonna be buffed again on Tuesday, and now it's probably actually like second best tank for Razagath on Mythic. While I've been hearing,
Essentially.
because it's like it's got mobility and also has the ability. Blood Decay and Brewmaster, like I mentioned this over and over again. Blood Decay and Brewmaster just trivialize the healing mechanic in Phase 3.
Yeah. 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 But yeah, it's just it's the balancing conversation is always funny because like that's generally like Blizzard doesn't balance to make sure everybody can like the distribution of people doing the top level keys shouldn't be a flat bar, right?
Yeah,
Like they'll be just at that level. There are certain classes just intrinsically are better based
yeah,
on something baseline that makes that class. And so no, I mean they talked a little about that and they talked also about just dungeon balance in general. Um, and nothing really groundbreaking there other than like if they need to make changes to a dungeon, they will try and make those changes early on in the season versus waiting. And
yeah,
generally, their changes will always be to make a dungeon easier versus raising its difficulty.
yeah. And
So,
they also talk about like wanting non-throughput things as reasons to bring classes, like the Rage Dispel
mushroom.
example that they use for raging weeks. But then it's like, you know, or non-restoration druid gets an invite 1 in 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's true. That is true. Yeah. So, um, we'll see. I mean, it's a good sort of. I think it's one of the first interviews Naguura has ever done. So, it was interesting at least to listen through. It's just not a ton of new info out
Yeah,
there. So,
I definitely thought the like stuff about Thundering was probably the most, especially the funny bit of them talking about maybe doing something with tanks on Thundering, and then by the time we
yeah.
reached the podcast, they've hotfixed Thundering for tanks.
Yeah, it came out yesterday or Friday, I think.
Yeah,
So yeah, so but yeah, no, it's good little interview from Naguura to talk a little bit some new info. Um, well, cool. I think that is everything that happened at least last week. Maybe one or two things we'll talk about in this next section. But so moving on to maybe like the main topic of today, which is really to talk. 10.0.5 comes out this week, so it's a big deal. First, major patch in Dragonflight, and to be honest with you, probably the quickest like major patch that's come out in Dragonflight that has a bunch of stuff in it. It was funny. I was reading the notes and like the trading post was like the first big thing, and then if that was the only thing coming out, I'd be like, oh, this is like the selfie stick patch. From was that from WAD was it or I
Yeah.
think which is like that was the only feature in it. And it was like a point 0.5 patch I think at that point. But
Wasn't
no, I
that
mean there's a
actually like isn't that actually like
was it a
6.1? I think it
oh
was.
no yeah it was a content patch. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was Twitter
Uh,
integration and the selfie stick.
yeah. So great. That was great patch. But no, so this one has a bunch in it. We've covered it over the past couple weeks. In terms of like a ton of, I mean, the biggest thing I think from our perspective is going to be like the class balancing, the talent changes,
Yeah.
updates. They're adding new talents,
I
right,
got
from
it.
Mistweaver.
I gotta get work
Um,
done on WoW
yeah,
and on Peak for the Brewmaster updates.
yeah, yeah. So it's a really fun patch, new patch. Some things will be interesting. We'll see. Maybe how we'll see how it goes. We'll see. I haven't talked about this much, but I'm not enjoying Mistweaver right now, surprisingly in raids. So there's a chance I might go the way of you and not be playing Mistweaver here in a couple weeks.
Well,
So
for reference, I have never been a Mistweaver player.
well, I meant Brewmaster. You've forsaken the brews, on
Yeah,
multiple
yeah, yeah,
occasions. I'm
yeah.
shocking. Um,
The is it just like is it a playstyle thing or is it the fun build has not the numbers build?
Uh, no, I think it's the play style. Like, yeah, I think it's kind of the play style, and I get very competitive, and it's very frustrating watching, at least in my raids, someone who I think I'm better than, like, crush me on like healing meters, and
Is that
like,
person an evoker by chance?
yes, it is, and it's very
Yeah.
upsetting,
You know,
very upsetting.
any time that you feel bad because the evoker is out healing you, just remember they're also healing the boss.
That's true. Oh, wait, what are they?
They can. They can.
No, that's true.
We have a Taros poll where the evoker healed the boss for 300k.
Oh, God, idiots. Um, No, but I think it's a combination of that, and I think the play style just doesn't. I don't. Yeah, I don't think I get it, and it's just personally frustrating for me.
Yeah,
I don't think it's bad. It's just like it's not.
it's not for
It
you.
doesn't click. It just doesn't click. But
Yeah.
any event, 10.5 comes out, and so I think the biggest thing that's come out this week in terms of new news that we haven't talked about yet is the creation or revival catalyst is what they're calling it.
The
Essentially, the catalyst.
catalyst. We're just gonna
Yeah, the
call it the
catalyst.
catalyst.
Yeah, and so this is of course the thing that changes gear that drops into you can basically transmute it or convert it into tier set pieces.
Yep.
And so they released essentially how the system works. It's you get a quest and a bar to fill up, and you do activities over the course of the week. And when you fill up that bar, you get one charge uh, to use for your catalyst. And so the activities range from like killing rare mobs in the new Primal Invasion event. It's doing world quests, or the major world events like the Feast or Dragonbane's Keep.
Right.
It's doing Mythic Plus dungeons.
Killing bosses in
It's
raids.
killing raid bosses and then
Yeah.
doing BGs or doing PvP pieces. And so you have to basically fill this bar up. There's a bunch of unconfirmed percentages on the Wowhead post for this, but it seems like you do enough activities, fill the bar, and you get a currency, you get a charge basically, and lets you convert one item.
Yeah.
Right now, you have a limit of 6 you can store on a character, and the quests seem to only be once a week. So
Right.
you essentially get one charge a week currently.
And it
Um,
is also account wide. Not only apparently, so
mhm,
not only is the charge account wide. That's confirmed. We know that that's like you get quest done. All of your characters get a charge, even if they don't
mhm.
exist yet. You could like finish the quest, boost a character, or like create and boost a character, and then they'll have the charge. But also apparently progressing the quest is supposed to be account wide too, which is like this is the first account wide quest for something like this.
Yeah.
Besides like battle pack quests, battle pack quests are all account wide.
Mhm.
So
That's a Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's a kind of a big deal. It also means that, like, one of the common problems with rating stuff, you get to the end of the tier, right? And you're just extending on the on Mythic. And you're done with heroic, you're done with normal, you don't need any loot from
Hmm.
and up to that point, the way you would get your catalyst charges, maybe you just like in reclear, you get it done on your main, and all of your alts
Yep.
have it. Um, this means that you don't have to find a way to get the quest done on your main and also your alts. Maybe it means that you do like a couple of weekly keys on your main and then a couple more weekly keys on an alt, and then maybe
Hmm.
you like do some normal or some heroic on your alt and get that unlocked that way, and like just being able to spread it out across like multiple. So you can do like if you are like really an alcoholic and you just play like 8 characters, you could just do like a weekly key on each
Hmm.
and
Yep.
get it that way. In theory, in practice, we don't know if it's actually gonna work.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully it does work like that, which will be nice. Just to get, to not have to worry about playing a specific character and, only progressing the quest that way. So, and this is sort of I think a big big change from the last Catalyst, because if you remember, that was all based on having a currency, which,
Yeah,
Cosmic Flux, which is just, if on your main was never an issue, but on your alt was always a pain point of like, I don't want to
yeah,
have to go do dailies again or like
yeah.
kill rare mobs to get flux.
And you
So,
definitely like we had this conversation when they announced that the catalyst would have capped charges. Like Cosmic Flux, once they made it, you could send it to other characters. You like paid, a little tax basically to send it from
mhm,
character to character, but your main probably had so much that you could fund 3 alts just
right.
instantly. And that's more or less what happened with me, is I was able to do that and then turn around and you need the fourth one and you have none left.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
there's some upsides and some downsides to this one, where like you can't fully catalyst everything
Mhm.
immediately with this. On the other hand, you don't need to. You need 4 charges for it,
Right.
and you have
Yeah.
like 2 extra charges in case you get a chest piece, you catalyst that, then you get a higher eye level chest piece, and you want to catalyst that. You've got breathing. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that is, I think, the big news on Catalyst this week. Quest opens, it starts this week too. So make sure you pick it up before you do any of your fun activities. Oh, sorry.
One other thing, they confirmed crafted gear is not eligible to catalyst.
Gotcha. Or the renowned track, which I'm assuming means any of like the
The
vendor based
reputation gear,
gear.
yeah,
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 any of
yeah.
the rep gear you can get. Um,
Um,
but it has to be drops basically from Mythic Plus or the raid. Um, or maybe quest gear. I don't
maybe
know.
like I'm assuming that like maybe um like
Like gear
drops
from rare drops.
from rare drops and things like that. Maybe you could do that. I don't know. They
Yeah, that
didn't
would be
confirm that,
a
but honestly, like you probably don't need that.
yeah. Yeah, at this point. Yeah.
Probably don't need
Yeah.
that.
Um so yeah, so that is sort of the creation, or sorry, the revival, the catalyst, in a nutshell. um so cool. And then so the other thing that we didn't really talk about was it was just data mined, but the trading post. The trading post is coming in. If you aren't familiar, a lot of people are like sort of calling it's like a WoW's version of Battle Pass, but it's like a fun thing with a bunch of like daily or like progression based things you can do that are open world out in the world, and you get a currency for doing those things. You can buy stuff with that currency, like transmog, pets, just random things. So it's sort of a like a not like a solo progression system where you get cosmetic type rewards, right, for doing it. And so one thing that was data mined was that there is a special uh, Night Elf Warden transmog that's available in both the Sun and Moon variant. So it's like a greenish yellow tint of this armor, and then a like a white purplish tint of this armor. And it comes from getting the special reward from the trading post 12 times. And the special rewards from trading posts are sort of a monthly reward you can get for completing tasks. And so you essentially need to do that monthly reward thing 12 times to get this, Warden transmog, which I think is cool. Um,
Yeah,
a a
there's
lot
been
of people are
a
slightly upset, but
there's been a number of people on the internet making mountains out of molehills as they
Yeah.
are wont to do, that are upset that it's going to take them a year of playing the game in order to get their Transmog Warden set. And you know what? A year is a long time. I'll give them that bit.
Yeah. It
For,
is, but at the same token, it's not like grinding every day for a year. It's like one day out of a month you have to like complete a couple tasks for the trading post, and then you get your progress counted for
yeah,
it, right?
like if this is just them adding basically veterans rewards. A bunch of games have
Hmm.
these. Final Fantasy has these as well, where like just for basically playing the game. I guess
Yeah.
for actually in the Final Fantasy case, it's just for being subscribed. You get that, but for this you have to actually play.
Hmm.
Uh,
Imagine that.
but it is something like it's a unique transmog for just like playing the game for a year. And I don't, based on my reading of the achievement, I don't think that you need like they're speculating like what if this needs to be consecutive, and my response would be that would be fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's no way that they word the achievement earn the monthly special reward from the trading post 12 times and have it mean your quest progress resets after you fail to do this once. Like
Yeah.
there's no shot. So,
Yeah.
well, there will be people like me that just will get this in 12 months, and there will be people that show up, for a month or two every patch, and they will get it in 2 years, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I don't see the issue with it. Also, not gonna lie, not that big of a fan of the transmog. I think it's okay, but not super cool.
This
I
is
don't know.
something. So there are like two good hunters, and they're both from
Okay.
Legion. Actually, well, there's the one from Nighthold,
Hmm.
and just the recolors for that set's good. And then there's the one from Tomb of Sargeras, which is the upscaling, better textures, better models of the like old like T6 transmog from
Yeah.
Black Temple. Um, and that's it. Those are the good sets. There are not other good sets. So this is number three.
Not bad. Not bad.
This is number three. So my hunter now has a little bit of extra variety, and like I wouldn't use this whole set, but like
Yeah.
you can turn off some of the bits like the shoulders and the helm. It's like big and out there.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, and I'm actually curious if there's like so I'm gonna pull the stream, but if you're listening, there's a big like collar, metallic collar thing, and it looks like it's attached to the helm. So I think if you hide the helm, then you hide the collar. But if not, then this may actually not be the third good hunter.
Yeah, that looks a part of the helm. So that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's a cool thing they're adding, like a long-term progression thing, like you said, like a veteran type reward for someone who is, kept up with this system for the last year or so. Um so cool that there's that coming. And then we talked about the rest of the trading post, but I mean nothing but good things to say about it, at least from my side. It's really good addition to the
As
game.
long as they don't like give you the option to buy whatever the currency is, like if you
Yeah.
cannot buy script, then this is fine. If they give
Yeah.
you the option to buy trading post script, then the whole thing goes in the dumpster real quick.
Yeah. No, agreed. Um So cool. And then one of the last updates, and then we can talk maybe a little bit. There was another set of data mine changes, which now it looks like you can activate or sorry, change your war mode status, not only in Orgrimmar, but also in Valdrakken,
Which is good.
which
It was always dumb
like
that you had to go back to the old to turn on war mode.
yeah, it was so annoying to do that. Like particularly like so like I generally run in war mode on for the majority of my time when I play the game.
You're crazy. But yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Go
it's I
off.
mean for me, I don't go out in the world generally unless it's like with somebody else and we're doing like swoops or we're doing something where like I just get 10% more of like what I need, right? Like whether
Yeah.
that's, whatever it ends up being, which is nice. Um I will tell you it was always a pain when like we would try like I'd be short on time, I need to get something done. So like quickly turn war mode off because I'm getting just killed. I just don't want to deal with it. do whatever I need to do, and then like the next time I have to go through and do swoops, I'm like, well, crap. Now I have to go all the way, like basically 2 or 3 loading screens, go to Ogremar, come back to whatever I was doing, then fly out to wherever I was going, and it was always like just that part of it I
Yeah,
never enjoyed. So
yeah.
it's nice that it's in the capital city. I'm hoping this just becomes the norm, where like they
They should just make
drop the
it.
or
Yeah,
well, I think going to the capital city is fine because that way it doesn't allow you to like quickly pull people in.
yeah. This should be like it should be sanctuaries, like major sanctuaries. Like I should be able to go to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. I should be able to go into the Horde City as a Horde player and turn on war mode.
Yeah, yeah.
Why not?
No, yeah, I agree, and I'm hoping maybe the plan is like like they just leave this as a Ogremar plus major expansion city type thing, where it's
Yeah,
like next expansion it won't be like Valdrakken gets dropped and whatever the new name of the new capital city is called, like that gets added, right?
yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, it's a nice quality of life change. You don't have to like jump through a bunch of hoops to
yeah.
change your war mode status. So,
We
um,
also got a final round, well, maybe final round of class tuning that was announced as coming with the 10.0.5 patch. This was announced on, I think, Friday. Yeah,
mhm.
Friday.
Yep.
Um, so there's a good bit of stuff in here. There's some highlights that I want to pull out. Not a whole lot that's monk related, but there is one change. Um, I just want to highlight they're buffing Fire Mage again
Yeah,
and
another
Frost
five
Mage.
percent damage. Another 5% damage to both. Yeah, that's
Um,
funny.
because mages must have at least 2 good specs. Anyway, they're also Mistweaver, Lesson of Despair. So this is this like the Shayloon's lessons thing?
Yeah, it's the talent that basically every time you use Shayloons, you get 104 buffs.
Okay, yeah,
Um, and yeah, this is increasing the Lessons of Despair where you it increased critical strike when while you're above 50% out. So if you get that proc, you get increased critical strike
right.
rating above
So
that health finish.
it was while you're above 80% health. Now it's while you're above 50% health, which is a pretty substantial buff actually, because like it's much harder to stay above 80% health than it is to stay above 50% health.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this also just gets it online sooner. So like the other
Yeah,
issue is that like technically when you're going to use Shayloons will more than likely be in a dungeon setting. So like if you're using it to heal up your party and you go above 80%, more than likely like 2 or 3 other people are also above 80%. And so like the need for the increased critical strike sort of drops,
yeah,
right? Like at that point, most of the rig group is probably topped and
yeah,
having more crits always nice, but it's not like a healing throughput increase. So yeah,
yeah.
dropping the trigger point I think is a good thing.
Um,
Um,
But like relevant to other healers, we've got major disc priest buffs. I'm not going to go through them because I'm not a disc priest, but our disc priest is very excited. Um, Major restoration shaman buffs, and our resto shaman is very excited about those.
yes, yeah,
Um,
good actually.
they buffed. Same with like similar to mages, they buffed both warlock specs. They're not seeing as much play. They're both seeing play. Like demo lock is fine, but they're buffing it. Although they're buffing it because it's not doing so good on single target. It's like doing good on cleave. So they're like trying to make the
Yeah,
single target better, which is like respectable. And I'm just like a little bit. It's just like a meme
yeah,
that like warlock must have multiple good specs, mage must have multiple good specs. Meanwhile, like most other spec classes for like the history of the game have had like one spec that's good ever at one point in time.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
but in fairness to them, they are doing better because we also got Arms Warrior and Fury Warrior buffs, which is like one of the classes that historically only one of those two specs is ever good at a time, and now they're trying to make like both of them good. And that's like,
yeah,
big thumbs up. That's good. They're also nerfing Protection Warrior, which is like, great rejoicing throughout the world.
yeah,
Um, and the Prot Warrior nerfs are small. Honestly, these are so long time ago, long time ago. One of the League of Legends designers commented that sometimes they nerf characters, like small nerfs, baby nerfs, to characters that people think are overpowered, just because the perception of, oh, they got nerfed, let me reevaluate things, is
yeah,
enough to get people to like try other things and knock something out of the meta.
Yeah.
That's basically what these Prot Warriors are. It works out to 12% reduced block rating, which is like it's substantial, but it doesn't actually affect crit blocks, which are what you're dealing a lot like with the really crazy blocks that they get during shield block.
Yeah.
Because so like they're mastery for those that don't know. There's like block, and the amount that you block is based on your block rating. It's not 100% like parry or dodge.
Right.
So the higher your block rating, the more you block. There's a cap. A crit block doubles your block rating, and currently that just like sends you way over the cap. This 12% does not make it stop doing that. So a crit block is still way over the cap. So like it doesn't affect crit blocks at all.
Right.
So it's like a nerf. It's going to hurt their durability slightly, but they're still going to be extremely good. The hope is everybody reads Prot Warrior nerf
Yeah.
and starts
Yeah.
inviting Guardian Druids.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting concept too about yeah the small nerfs just to change people's perception or to have people look at different things, right? I think is always good. So, um, but yeah, I mean that's like we've already covered. I think most of the other changes in the patch, so it's not bunch of like we said, bunch of Mistweaver changes in this thing. I think all of them good. So we'll see how it plays. I think you're pretty excited about the Brewmaster stuff.
Yeah, some good
The
Brewmaster
Windwalk,
talent changes.
yeah, I don't. There's not much. Or does Windwalker get a ton? I didn't think there was much in the way of Windwalker. It was like some minor things around like Phaline Stomp and
Yeah,
some of like the reset stuff there, but nothing really in terms of numbers tuning for Windwalker coming in.
and
So
honestly,
uh,
Windwalker doesn't need it. Windwalker's got a good
yeah,
AOE build, a good single target build, and also has the ability to do really good burst single target, which is actually like one of the things we're doing for Dathea platforms is we have split up our Arcane Mage and our Windwalker. And our Windwalker is
mhm.
playing the Serenity build that they were playing for Sinarth, where they were just like crushing the medium
Yeah,
spider, just like destroying it, like #1 damage by a mile. And so we're gonna have Arcane Mage on one, and they're gonna be #1 damage by a mile. And we're gonna have Windwalker Monk on the other, and they're gonna be #1 damage by a mile.
that's
And
awesome.
and so that's like that's good. That's good. Windwalker's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Um, so yeah, tons of tons of changes. It's just such a I can't reiterate it enough or say enough. Like it's such a departure from like the typical .0.5 patches we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
I think it's primarily. I mean, it is the first patch after they put in this massive talent thing. So I think there's a lot of things that probably just missed like the final like launch build
Right.
window
Yeah.
that's sort of included in this. But even beyond that, I think there's just a lot of good stuff here. Even if you
Yeah.
don't play Monk, Druid's getting massive changes. So,
Most of which is
um,
still broken.
yeah, which is well, they
Uh,
have 24 hours. So,
yeah, hang on. Let me. What's the name of the ability? It's like Lunar Strikes or something. I'm finding it. Lunar Beam.
okay.
Uh, it deals damage to you and heals your target.
hmm
You target it at an enemy.
That's so funny. That's so funny. It's just flip flop they just flip flop the bits.
They
Just got
just
flip
flip flop
flop.
the bits. Yep.
Yeah, turn that
Yep.
one into a zero and you're good.
Yep.
Uh,
It's so funny though.
that's that's so funny. Yeah, yeah.
Man. Um. But yeah, I mean, I think that's about it for
Yeah.
for the podcast this week.
And not too much. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit maybe next week just about how the changes actually feel, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't been on PTR much this cycle, so I haven't
Yeah.
actually played with the new stuff, but
I
yeah.
did the number of keys on my this week more than I had been, and I'm excited to go in next week with the new talents because one of the things that I did notice is running out of expel harm orbs, and then like not being able to in boss fights like trash you just like have a million, but in
Yeah.
boss fights
Yeah.
like the boss doesn't do enough damage, like lets you have a big expel harm after every major mechanic, but some of these talents, Spirit of the Ox, like might. So yeah,
Okay.
it's gonna be
Awesome.
interesting. But
Nice. Nice.
the best place to come and hang out, talk about all these new talents and new builds and all this fun stuff is going to be the Peak of Serenity Discord, which I highly recommend that you come. And if you want to support us, work we do on the show and on the site,
Right.
and I'm loving the outro. You can do that.
You're doing real bad, by the way.
Yeah. You can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And if you do become a patron, please put a note. This is for emallson, not Anomoly. Just for that. Rude. But that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening, and we will see you next week.
See ya.